How do you spell persistence? Yes, how do you spell persistence? Good morning. My name is Ann McNeil, and I am the Master Wealth Builder, helping you to build a stronger and a better life and business. And today, our special principle is persistence. Some people spell it Persistence. I like to spell it Insurance. Can I say it again? Insurance. Yes, that spells insurance. Because if you are desiring success in any area of your business and your life, you must persist with the spirit of excellence, the same as you persist in securing insurance for your business and your life. Today, we have a phenomenal guest. But I say that every week, but today it is very true. We have a phenomenal guest, Miss KARLA Hill, that's going to share with us about how she uses this principle of persistence. But I really want each of you, whether you're live or in the future, or you're listening or watching, ask yourself the question, how do you spell persistence? How do you use this particular principle when you move forward or not in persisting with the spirit of excellence toward your desire? There are many reasons to persist, and oftentimes we get it mixed up with some symptoms of lack of persistence. We're going to talk about that a little later. But I would be remiss if I did not introduce our special, yes, he is special, co-host. Good morning, good morning, good morning, Galen Bingham. How are you this morning?
Fantastic. Looking forward to this conversation. I am always amazed at how no plan will go according to plan. And any suggestions, any recommendations, any expert advice I can get on how to stay persistent on those things that I say that are important to me, I am always looking forward to those conversations, and this is going to be no different. I'm also always impressed at how Napoleon Hill, in his book Think and Grow Rich, written in 1937, always seems to bring principles that are applicable today. I can't think of a time where persistence is needed more than today, whether it's starting a business, whether it is trying to complete school. Like my daughter's in her senior year at Spelman College, and she's requiring persistence to stay focused, whether it's a marriage, whether it's a friendship, regardless of what you are trying to accomplish and achieve, you need to have persistence. And I can't think of a better person to have that conversation with than Miss KARLA Hill. So I can't wait to get into this conversation.
All right, well, let's talk a little bit before we bring KARLA on in sharing what is this persistence principle. Napoleon Hill tells us that it is the essential factor. And I would I would be remiss if I did not think about every area of my life and my business where I did not have great clarity about my desire. And he shares that in order to transmute your desire into, especially into a monetary equivalent, you must have the principle of persistence, but you also must have the power of will to do so. And so, thinking about persistence and the power of will, I met this young lady in another organization called the National Association of Black Women in Construction, Miss KARLA Hill. And she, I think, is the epitome. Yes, I think you're the epitome, KARLA, of persistence, because you were relentless in persisting with the spirit of excellence to ensure that we connected with your special service and your product. So come to the front of this video, KARLA, and welcome to our podcast. And thank you so much also for following us on Saturdays. And let me just introduce KARLA a little bit more. She's a certified human resource leader, and with over 31 years of experience in progressively responsible positions, and I love that word. That's code for persistence. Positions in government. Her areas of expertise include labor relations, recruitment, and succession planning. She currently serves as the Deputy Director of HR, Human Resources and Administration for a local government agency. Good morning, Karla, and welcome to the show this morning. How are you?
So glad to be here. Thank you for the invitation, Anne, and great to be here, Galen.
Yes, Karla, let's kind of go back and just have you share a little bit more about I can go into your bio in great detail, but I think that it's equally, if not more important, that you share with the audience a little bit about yourself. Let's go back to early childhood when you began to, yes, let's go all the way
Wow.
back there as that little Karla who knew what she wanted and would not stop until she got what she wanted. Take us back to when you began to realize that there were certain desires or goals or aspirations you had as a young child. And you knew, may not have called it persistence, but you knew that there were some things that you must do in order to achieve that. Can you remember a time back in your early childhood where that turned for you?
That's a great question, Anne. Thank you. So I began working at around 14 years old. So I was born and raised in New York City, a daughter of an immigrant and entrepreneur. My dad's was from Ondaw, South Carolina, my mother from Lamont, Costa Rica. And where would two people meet except New York City from such different places? So my first job was working in a Wall Street firm as a file clerk. And what I remember is having a senior leader. I probably wouldn't call it that senior leader at the time, but a person that was big in the organization asking me to get a file. I brought back the wrong file, and she just reamed me out. I don't remember exactly what she said, but I think it. And when I processed it later, my mother remembers me telling that story and me being shaken up. Now I went back the next day, but how I felt in terms of just less than a human being and having, over 30 plus years in HR, what I remember and one of my values is treating people with dignity and respect, no matter how, because I've been in very sensitive situations. You're laying people off, you are terminating people, you are disciplining people. But I think you still see them as human beings, right? And I think that what I would look at as traumatic instance that I forgot a long time ago, but that's what comes up. And I think that it's really just helped me set my values of how I treat people.
Wow, that's powerful because what you're sharing is that oftentimes what happens in our younger self has a way of impacting the current self in terms of how we view the world and in terms of how we view ourselves. And so I don't think from knowing you a short period of time, I think maybe it's about a year, maybe something like
Yeah,
that.
about that. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I don't think you have I don't view you as having an issue with self-confidence and those things. Now, actually, I think it's the other side. I view as see you as very confident and very driven. And I see that as the face of pure persistence, pure persistence. Now, what about in your current life? How do you use this principle? And then we're going to go to a quick commercial and share the 13 principles. But I really want to just give our audience just a little bit more about who you are, what you do. And for those of you that have just joined us, yes, we are speaking with Ms. Karla Hill. And Karla is committed to empowering others in the area of career development and attributes her passion for education and economic inclusion to her upbringing and exposure to diverse communities, as you've just heard. She holds a BBA in public administration from Baruch College and an MS from Chestnut Hill College, and is an adjunct professor at Eastern University. So, Karla, help me understand what is driving your desire in the area of HR in terms of the spirit of persistence to just continue to help support others?
So I would say, just in terms of really knowing who Karla is. It takes a lot of work. What I want to recommend to people is knowing who you are, assessing. What I love helping people, but it's in that area of economic empowerment. And as a person of faith, you can say, the universe, who I call God, he's given me those opportunities, the 30 plus years in human resources, in government. I would challenge you to name an occupation that does not exist in government. So in that role, whether it's blue collar, white collar, no collar, I've supported different occupations, right? Whether it's tradespeople, mechanics, doctors, lawyers. That those experiences helped me in my career strategy business, GPS career and business strategies, where I'm pivoting. I'm retiring after 35 years this September. So that desire to really go all in and help people in the areas of career planning, business development, and economic improvement. And that those experiences of helping people in those occupational areas, being certified in different assessment tools, right? People don't know themselves. I know I'm motivated to move people to that next level, maximize my own, people have taken strengths finders, I'm certified in Myers-Briggs, Career Direct, getting all that data about Karla and leaning into what space do I want to be in. I want to help people, but I need to know what they're into by assessing them. All the experiences that I have given, probably supervised over 100 people, supported thousands of people in HR, I bring all of me, my personality, my interests, my skills, and my values to the table to pour into others and add value and have that be a win-win proposition to my business. But it's that desire and that decision. It was a tough decision to retire from that. And even though my husband says, don't be fooled, that just means that she has 3 jobs instead of 4, right? But I'm taking those experiences and bringing my gifts and talents to that field of business and helping others and being that win-win proposition.
Wow, that's powerful, 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 powerful. Before we go any further, and I see Galen smiling and almost leaning in. So Galen, before we go to the 13 principles, I'm not sure if you want to maybe take a moment, and if you have a question, Galen, if you want to share it. If not, then if you would like to go ahead and we can discuss the 13 principles and come back and continue this conversation with Karla.
Yeah, I'm going to do a little bit of both. I'm going to tease a question that I'd love for you to ask on the other side of this video. One of the things that I'm often fascinated by is how in plain sight these principles and the gems from these principles happen to be. The title of this principle in the book is Persistence, the sustained effort necessary to induce faith. And you talked about how you are a person of faith, and faith is really, really important. So on the other side of this video, I want to talk about what does it take? Give me some examples of where you didn't quite have faith yet. You just had to stay on it, stay focused, believing that you could believe until your faith kicked in. Because very often it's not just as easy as saying, I believe and I have faith. You've got to do some things before your faith kicks in. So I'd love to hear what that looks like for someone who is trained and certified in all these things that help you understand what you're here to do. But we don't always get it as clearly as we would like to project. So let's take a listen to this video. And on the other side of it, we're going to get into this conversation a little deeper.
Number 1 is desire. Napoleon Hill said that everything starts with a burning desire, a compelling reason for doing what it is we do. Step 2 is faith, having belief in our ability to attain that which we desire. Step 3 is what we call autosuggestion. Autosuggestion simply means being very intentional about the things that we are pouring into our thoughts, into our brains, and into our consciousness. Our brains, our minds will receive everything automatically, but we have to work extra hard to make sure that the positive things are what we are feeding ourselves, because those positive thoughts are going to turn into positive actions. Step number 4 is specialized knowledge. No one person knows everything, even about whatever their particular area of expertise might be. And the value of the mastermind principle is using the specialized knowledge of other people. Step number 5 is imagination, the workshop of the mind. Everything starts with our imagination and our thoughts, the burning desire to transform those thoughts into our reality. In order to do that, we have to take a look at step 6, which is organized planning. That is how we crystallize our desire into action, organizing ourselves. Having the thought and not acting on the thought isn't going to get us anywhere. We have the thought, we go through the organized planning to transform that thought into action. Step number 7 is decision. What Napoleon Hill said is the mastery of procrastination. Napoleon Hill said that the antidote to procrastination is simply to make a decision and then move on that decision. Step 8 is persistence. We have to have a sustained effort which is induced by our faith in order to achieve our goals. One of Napoleon Hill's books I love, even the title, 3 Feet from Gold. Those people who became rich during the gold rush in the wild, wild west days didn't do that because they were necessarily smarter or had better information than anyone else. It's because they stayed just a little bit longer. Sometimes people left when they were just literally 3 feet from gold. So hanging in there, being persistent, is step number 8. Step number 9, the power of the mastermind, the driving force. None of us can accomplish anything on our own. Everybody, I don't care who you are, from the most prominent person to the person who might be considered the lowest on the totem pole, everybody has someone who helped them get to where they are. And the power of the mastermind is being able to use those influences around us, use the thoughts, use the knowledge, use the exploration of other people to help us in achieving our goal. Step number 10, the mystery of sex transmutation. This title can be a little confusing, but essentially what the mystery of sex transmutation means is that we oftentimes in our society think of sex as being purely physical. It is absolutely physical, but what Napoleon Hill teaches us is that sex also has an emotional element, and that sex is the strongest of our desires. That if we can take our sexual energy, transform that into positive, creative influences, it can propel us to new heights. And so we spend quite a bit of time talking about the mystery of step 10, which is sex transmutation. Step number 11 is the subconscious mind, which Napoleon Hill tells us is the connecting leap between our human mind and the infinite intelligence, the source of all thought, the source of all creativity. Conscious mind, we spent some time talking about how we use that through the influence of autosuggestion and what we're feeding into our mind. Step number 12, which is the brain, the broadcasting and receiving station of thought. Final step number 13, the sixth sense, the door to the temple of wisdom. This is the final step through which infinite intelligence may and will communicate voluntarily without any effort from or demands by the individual. The principle is the apex of the philosophy. It can be assimilated, understood, and applied only by first mastering the other 12 principles.
All right, and there you have all 13 principles, and we are talking with Ms. KARLA Hill about the principles of persistence. Before I toss you back for you to address the question that I raised about the need and the situations where you only had faith that you would have faith. Faith hadn't kicked in yet. I just want to acknowledge the folks who are joining us on YouTube. So Doretha Dennis is always in the audience on YouTube. So thank you for being a part of today's conversation. Shannon Charlton, Ms. 446 Smitty, Power Thinking, Jennifer Felton, and Cindy Johnson Moreau. Please, if you are watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up icon underneath the video so that we can tell the YouTube algorithm that we've got something going on over here. And then when you hear Ann or Karla say something that you think is absolutely mind blowing and earth changing, please hit that little heart button in the lower right hand corner so that we can let them know to keep cooking with the grease they're cooking with. So now, Karla, there had to be some moments where you didn't know whether or not this thing was going to work, but you just had faith that your faith would kick in. Tell me about those moments along your journey where all you had was the faith that faith would come.
So again, thank you for that question, Galen. I would say, I look at my life not just in terms of business or what I do, the purpose, but, part of my training is putting my life in 4 buckets, right? In terms of faith, family, fitness, and finance. And in terms of fitness, in the past 3 years, I've released 80 pounds, right? And when I say release, I say that word intentionally as opposed to lose, because when you go lose something, you try to go find it, right? And I would say, and the principles that I picked up in this book in terms of persistence, I've always had a problem with being overweight. From a little girl, just on struggles. And I think one of the things that the principles of the book and principles that I've applied to these 4 areas of my life is having that desire, right? Knowing that you want it so bad and really believing. For me, optimum health, right? Growing up, not being the popular, not sitting at the cool kids table, right? Because I'm overweight and so on and so forth. But what happens is now that I'm growing older, it becomes more of a health issue, right? In terms of looking at my numbers and wanting to be around for a while and feeling good. So optimizing that. But I believe being that person of faith, a faith practitioner, I believe God brought me some of the things that I needed, right? Having that desire, having that purpose, having a plan, a system. Now, how I did it is with a group of individuals, and the system is for me, no sugar, no flour, only 3 meals a day, no eating in between. But I could not do that without a community, right? Without support. So I'm, one of the assessment tools I use in my practice in all my relationships is a drive assessment. I'm a relator executive on that drive system. So my why is to pour into people. How I do that is like, let's go meet some goals, right? I'm an executive. Like, what are your goals? My goals were to achieve optimum health, right? And part of that was releasing the weight, but I could not do it by myself. So having that purpose, having a plan, and kind of eliminating some of the other bad habits, but replacing them with good habits and people. And I believe the same thing works, whether it's a church, whether it's a mosque, whether it's a mastermind, right? It's like at some point you have to eliminate the clutter that's not adding value and replace it with individuals and principles and education that will move you to that next level.
Mm. I love that. I love that. And I also love when you talk about eliminate the things that are not adding value. There's a very famous conversation between Warren Buffett and one of his executives. And the executive was asking Warren Buffett, I'm feeling overwhelmed. I got all this stuff that I'm trying to do. And Warren Buffett says, okay, list your top 25 priorities. And so the guy listed his top 25 priorities. And then Warren Buffett said, okay, now identify the most important 5 of those top 25 priorities and circle them. And he circled the top 5. He said, okay, now I want you to draw a line through all the other 20 that you didn't circle. And he said, well, why am I drawing a line through them? They're really, really important. He goes, no, those 5 are the most important. Those other 20 are just distractions. And we can be distracted by things that seem good, but if they're not consistent with the things that you say are most important, then they are distractions. So, oh my gosh, I love that conversation because you really just highlighted for you, what are those most important things? And if they don't fit into those things, then you need to find a way to make sure you're not distracted.
Yeah, sometimes the phrase, I didn't come up with the phrase, but it resonates with me. Sometimes good is the enemy of great. There's lots of good things that come my way, but I'm going to have to say no. Right? Growing up, I watched a lot of TV. Big sports fans will watch a lot of spectator sports. My dad was a big sports fan. I was a big Yankee fan. But I'm like, and I big Oprah Winfrey friend. I'm like, Oprah got her stuff. In terms of where's my stuff, I have to be intentional about my activities, right? It's not just watching hours of TV or hours of news. And I'm thankful for podcasts because at least you can multitask. Well, sitting there, that's again, no judgment, but it's time is not renewable. That's something I don't get back. So I have to be very intentional about what I fill that space with.
Wow, I love it. I love it. I love it. Before I give this back to Ms. Ann, I want to go back to my question earlier about those moments when you only have faith that faith is going to kick in. You don't quite know how you're going to get to the end. You don't know if you're going to get to the end. You just have faith that faith is going to kick in. Have there been moments like that where all you had was the faith that faith was going to kick in?
So I would say it's a daily, like just right now, making the decision to retire, right? That's not part of my, in terms of growing up in government for 35 years. You wait till you get the max, right? So right now is a faith decision on my part. I'll let you know how that ends up, but that's really what I'm doing. It's step by step in terms of, all right, I'm going to do this. Well, I'm not going to eat those tortilla chips, right? I'm not going, it's for me to be a faith practitioner, Galen, is every day, all right, this is what I'm going to do. And I'm hoping that it's going to net what I'm looking for it to do, right? So it's every single day, right?
I love it. I love it. Miss Anna, I see you taking notes over there.
Uh-oh.
She's
I'm in
taking
trouble
notes. Come on back into the conversation.
Galen, I never left the conversation. And of course, I'm taking notes and I'm sharing on social media. So I want to encourage everybody who's listening live. Please, please, please remember to comment, like, and share this podcast, because this assessment that KARLA's talking about and this conversation is so powerful. And it's not until you get to know, first of all, what you don't know about yourself, and not only yourself, but those around you. My question to you, though, KARLA, as I was rereading this principle in preparation for today, one of the areas that popped up for me, and it happens every time, was the section we talked about sometimes our ideas are stillborn because we lack persistence to act on them. My question for you is, and you can choose anything that you can remember, if you will. Are there any ideas that you may have had that are stillborn because of the lack of persistence in acting on them on your part?
I would say starting my business. I've always been exposed to, streams of income and extra income, but in terms of sitting down and doing the planning, the documentation for my business, taking who KARLA is. And I did that 4 years ago, right? In terms of GPS career and business strategy. I should have done it 20 years ago, right? I've always been involved I worked in human resources for 35 years. So I was the person that was supposed to be, but that wasn't my orientation to really start it. And it's that lack of action over the years. I could have been much further along in terms of the establishment of that GPS career and business strategy, my business. So yes, if I didn't take immediate action 4 years ago, enrolling in a business planning course, writing it out, it would have still been something I talk about and I do here and do there, as opposed to developing the infrastructure and the structure. I mean, part of what we talk about, or the author talks about in Think and Grow Rich, is yes, having that purpose, knowing your purpose and having that clarity, but a plan, right? If you don't really have a plan, if you're not documenting that plan, and I would say that is my greatest development area, right? I'll take action and just go here and there, but it's not going to be sustained action without pouring in and documenting properly. So I would say that would be my example, and not pouring into it consistently and making sure that happens.
Okay, now you just hit the nail on the head. And I'm sitting here texting some HR experts that I know that are in their jobs, and they would love to do the same thing. So let's just rewind this just for a second, and let's go, all three of us. And for those of you that's listening in, we'd like to have you join us for just a second, because KARLA just hit on almost all of the points that Napoleon Hill said in terms of what you must have to be persistent. You must have a definiteness of purpose, but you must also have a desire and self-reliance, but you must also have a plan. And she talked about the fact that she didn't have one years ago. Now, the closer she's getting to retiring, the more she realizes that she needs to definitely have a plan. But let's talk just for a second, KARLA, just for a second, Galen, and all of you that's listening on the live, if you will. If each of us would just take one of the symptoms and type it in the chat on YouTube, just one of the symptoms of the lack of persistence. So, KARLA, we're gonna start with you. One, persistence. I'm gonna run through them real quick. And KARLA, we're gonna ask you to type it. Galen, we're gonna ask you to type it. I'm gonna type mine. And Lynn, Doretha, all of you that's listening on the YouTube live, we're gonna ask you to type one symptom that you're lacking in terms of this principle of persistence. And this is the list that he gives us. He says, failure to recognize and clearly define exactly what you want. The second one is procrastination. Third is lack of interest. Fourth is indecision. I may be going a little fast, but you can choose one. Indecision is number 4. The habit of relying upon alibis. And you can just pick a word, or you can pick a number. Just put something in the chat. Number 6, self-satisfaction. And this would include that there's little remedy for this affliction and no hope for those who suffer from it. Number 7, he says indifference. Number 8 is the habit of blaming others. Number 9 is weakness of desire. Number 10, I'll slow down, catch up. Number 10 is willingness or even eagerness to quit at the first sign of defeat. Number 11 is lack of organized plans. That might be one you might want to put if it relates to you, whoever you are. Number 12, the habit of neglecting to move on ideas or grasp opportunity when it presents itself. I'm going to choose that one for me. Number 13 is wishing instead of willing. Number 14 is the habit of compromising with poverty. Number 15, oh, I heard a Number 15, searching for all the shortcuts to riches. Number 16, and this is the last one, fear of criticism. Now, if you want me to repeat any of those or just choose a word, but I think, and I'll put mine in the chat too on YouTube. I have a number of them, but anyway, you can just put one. And I just really wanted to go through that, because what happens to many of us is that sometimes we don't necessarily recognize it for what it is. And like KARLA shares with us about the assessment, we don't know what we don't know sometimes. And then when we do know, we may not act on it. So KARLA, which one works best for you?
I could not, I had an involuntary response to compromising with poverty, right? I mean, again, sometimes it's that balance, right? That, oh, earning 6 figures, that's good. And that's not poverty. It's that balance between being grateful and maximizing what's meant for me, right? So that's what comes up for me, that compromising with poverty. And again, poverty is a strong word, but so I guess that's why it was that involuntary response. But it's what's for KARLA. What am I made to be? Just my earning power is limitless, right? And believing that, right? So yeah, without saying anything more, that's what I would say.
All right, all right. Well, before we go to Galen, oh my goodness. Let's see. Portia says lack of organized plans. Lynn says procrastination. Abundant Health shares procrastination. Cindy says lack of organized plans. And BB Barden says procrastination. Let's see. All right. All right. All right. Ann McNeil. I have so many. Oh, wait a minute. I heard Galen laugh. Galen, we're gonna let you talk about yours. But I started out with procrastination until I continued to read this principle. And then I moved on to lack of organized plans. I had plans, but they were not as organized as they could be, should be, would be. So I'm going to stick with those two, procrastination and lack of organized plans. Galen, what about you?
Yeah, the one that I continue to work on is fear of criticism. Now, fear of criticism for me, though, is specific in that it's fear of criticism from people who are close to me. I can go on stages, I can talk to thousands of people, and I really don't have a fear of criticism from that standpoint. But when my wife's in the audience or when my daughter's there, I've got to be really, really mindful of still doing what I'm there to do. Or if I've got an idea and I share that idea too soon with people who are close to me, I've got to be mindful of how I protect those ideas in the early stages because that fear of criticism will kick in. So, yeah, that's a big one for me that I'm always guarding against.
Wow, I just really want to encourage all of us that we're all the same if you stop and think about it. And this principle of persistence, it really requires every one of the items that Napoleon Hill talked about in terms of being able to persist. And I like to add with a spirit of excellence. And I keep adding that with the spirit of excellence. And I'm going to say it one more time, with a spirit of excellence. Because if you have a desire and you have plans, and KARLA, you said something, I wrote this down, I just want to make sure I mention it. You said the lack of documented plans, but also the lack of sustained effort. Sustained effort. I mean, we can be warm and cold, but Napoleon Hill tells us in the very beginning of these principles, you can have a desire, but it is a burning desire. And I think from listening to your story, KARLA, and the fact that you're approaching retirement in the next few months, actually in about 90 days to be exact, that desire sounds like I might hear it burning.
Yes.
I might hear this desire is becoming a burning desire the closer you get to it. And I know Cindy has been talking about retiring for many years from her job and starting. But I would encourage every single one of us who's listening to this podcast today, take a page out of KARLA's book, my book, all of our book. Do it now. Do not hesitate on your plans. If you are a professional in a job and in a career and you desire to be an entrepreneur, become an entrepreneur now. And persist inside of that organization with your own business. Take your time, develop a mastermind or create a mastermind group of accountability. The other thing that you said, KARLA, when you talked about the weight, you talked about having a support group, whatever you call it, support group, prayer group, mastermind group, whatever you want to call it, each of us. Have accountability, because Napoleon Hill tells us that in order to vet your plans, you really should have like-minded, like-spirited individuals who are willing to hold you accountable, but that are very supportive of your goals. Because sometimes we can have people around us, it's like Galen just shared, and they could be family and may not be as supportive as you would like them to be. You can go outside of that and secure the necessary support that you need. KARLA, are there any habits that you think that you've developed from this principle of persistence that you'd like to share with the listeners?
Definitely. And, when you're thinking, when you were talking about community, one of my favorite quotes is a Kenyan proverb. If you want to go fast, go by yourself. But if you want to go far, go with others. I am definitely, I don't know why I'm designed that way, but I am a go with others person, right? I used to say, oh, I love accountability. No, I realize I need accountability to accomplish my goals. I like to accomplish goals. And when it's with other people, I will disappoint myself before I disappoint somebody else, right? So it's having that intentional group and also the consistency of being part of that group every day. I have a daily accountability groups for my business, for my weight, my health, for it's church. It's that consistent habit. So for my business, making my goal is always 5 business calls a day, but just because that's 3. What I usually hit is 3 business calls a day, right? My husband and I work in real estate also, so it's searching for properties daily, every day. Duolingo, I mentioned that my mother's from Costa Rica, but my Spanish is poor, so I'm always practicing my Spanish. And not to give that app credit, but I like it because I'm like at 210 days straight and not breaking. It's that consistency of anything. And what I realized in watching people work, watching myself work, what you do in one area, whether it's faith, finance, fitness, or family, you tend to, we call it fancy word in HR, transferable competencies. I realize if I'm consistent in those intentional habits, what I call success habits, I will be successful. I don't need to be successful in everything, right? But I'm going to pick what is going to align with my personality, interests, skills, and values, and what I'm looking for, and develop those habits. Like I talked about in terms of my health, I don't eat in between meals. I eat, I no sugar, no flour. That's something. So I don't even have to think about it anymore, right? Oh, do you want that floury substance? No. Do I want it for real? Yeah, but I'm not. I'm not gonna have it. I'm not. Right. So it's certain habits that I'm going to lean into and that I'm going to be a practitioner in.
Wow. Galen.
Yeah, one of the things you mentioned a couple of times is accountability, mastermind groups, having people around you. What are some things, in my accountability group, I meet with a couple of executive coaches. And so it's an executive coaching accountability group. And one of the things that we do is we spend time coaching each other. And it is always, again, fascinating to me how I can be struggling with an issue in my business. I go to my group and they ask me the exact same kinds of questions that I just asked one of my clients, 2 hours ago. So we can know what to do, but still not have the oomph that it takes to do it. What are some examples of where you know what to do, you know the answers, but when it's personal, when it's reflected to your life, you need to have that accountability group. You need to have that other person, that like-minded person, to give you oftentimes the same advice that you might give someone else.
Thanks for that question. So during the pandemic, one of the things being that career strategist, I'm really a nerd when it comes to occupational pathways. And I know that there's 33,000 different occupations, right? And nobody else would know except people that are nerdy like me in that. So when I heard of the term life coach a few years ago, I'm like, I don't know what that is. I'm just that biased towards that. But during the pandemic, I went through a certification program to be a certified career coach. And as I was being coached for the certification, because I was being coached, that's when I made the decision that I was going to retire 4 years ago, right? It probably would have been another 5 years if I didn't go through that process. So what I realized from a life coach or any type of coach that someone has is really just that intentional space for you to focus on you. What coaches are doing are facilitating, and sometimes I'm just too close. All right, it takes another person, because my mind will tell me things like, oh yeah, and just the amen corner to myself, right? But when I'm saying it out loud, when I'm processing it over the course of days or weeks, those life altering decisions will be made. It's that space, it's that time, and giving room for God, or some people call the universe, to work, right? But it was because of going through that certification program, that's when I gained the clarity of what do I really want? What do I really want? But if I didn't take that pause, it would not have happened. That pause with that coaching group, because it was a cohort, and it was over the course of those weeks, so the months that I was in the program, that clarity came of what does Karla want to do with her life.
I love that. I love that. And I can absolutely identify with the need for being distant, being separated from, because the closer you are, that's probably why physicians are never supposed to operate on their relatives. I coach executives literally all over the world, but I can't coach my family because I've got too much of a vested interest. It's hard for me to coach myself because I really want things to work out. And you've got to have someone who can reflect back to you what you're saying and how is that in alignment with who you're trying to be and what you're trying to accomplish. So I really, really appreciate that. So, and back to you.
Well, listen, I know, Karla, that you were not a part of the pre-planning of this podcast. I know you were not, because it was only two people on this call at 7 a.m. Eastern this morning. 6, if you're another part of the world, and you know, there were only two people. You were not here. So how in the world did you just describe exactly what I said to Galen? I don't understand that.
That's that supernatural stuff, Ann.
Listen, this is called the confirmation, and the people that I text, you know who you are. If you just joined us, we're talking to you too. But what you said is exactly what I said to Galen. I'm just coming back from Denver for investing a week at the National Speakers Association. And I personally hold 2 general contracting licenses here in the state of Florida. I have an undergraduate degree in accounting, I have a master's in finance, and a lot of certifications doing a lot of different things, such as the Napoleon Hill Foundation. I also hold that certification and some others. But I never saw myself until this week getting a certification as a certified speaking professional, which is in our area of national speakers or Black speakers or whatever you want to call it. I never saw myself getting that until this week. And exactly what you said about getting clarity about who you must become in order, first of all, to be coached and to coach, but also the business. And one of the reasons why I elected to take this journey, which will be in 24, 25, maybe even 26, to get this certification, is because of the business that I am building as a speaker that speaks professionally, internationally. And the certification will help me with the building of the business. And when I heard you say the exact same things in terms of, and this is for all of us, and I went through Galen's certification as he did his executive, I sat on this side of the camera, as he and Peter, you know, they decided that they wanted to build a coaching business before executives, and then for a certain type of executives. And the more they niched, the clearer they became. And I watched that along with so many of others that have been on this podcast. I want to thank you dearly. And Lynn Whitfield when Lynn Whitfield put it in the chat and she said, thank you for willing to be vulnerable, because you have really been a blessing, I know, to me today. And if any of you are listening and she's been a blessing to you, just put the word blessing. Because the other thing that came up for me, and I'm wrapping up because it's almost time to go. The other thing that came up for me while you were sharing, when you talked about the consistency, is the fact that, and this is why I asked you to be on the podcast, every Friday for not weeks, but for months, every single Friday at 7 a.m., you have joined us on the Think and Grow Rich Friday accountability call. And I told Michelle, I said, you got to ask her to come, because she has been the most persistent, the most consistent of many of the individuals. Most people are, in and out, but you have been persistent in being on that call by walking through one page of this Think and Grow Rich book per week. And you've been very consistent and persistent in sharing, here's my goal. I want to make 3 calls, and you come back and you share whether you did or not. And so I just want to share that for those who are listening. We come here every Saturday and we share a principle and a person to support all of our listeners. And I think that this show has been pretty persistent. We've been on this podcast now. We used to call it Blog Talk, now for almost 18 years. And yes, 18 years every Saturday. And so I just want to thank you, KARLA, as we prepare to talk about our annual meeting. I really want to encourage you and all of our listeners to join us, because you talk about persistence. This International Mastermind Association has persistently created a platform for individuals and their families to come at least once. We used to do it twice a year, but now we're back to just once a year, now that we have these other platforms like Zoom and conference calls and things like that, where we can connect with each other. But the fact of this is that we are all looking for community to be held accountable for our goals and our dreams and our aspirations. And we also like just being able to be together. So we want to encourage all of you to join us in 2025, January 3rd and 4th, 2025 in Boca Raton. You can go to internationalmasterminders.com with an S, internationalmasterminders with an S.com, and you can register. That event is going to take place on January 3rd and 4th, 2025, and we will be in Boca Raton, Florida. Please register now. Do not delay. Even if you're on the brink of deciding yes, no, make it a yes, because once you make the decision, the way will present itself. And for those of you who have persistently come, we want to thank you. For those of you that this will be your first time, we are also planning this summer to do a mid-year prep meeting for those who've come before, so you can have a mid-year check-in. And for those of you who are planning on coming, you're also invited to at least begin to plan your goals for the balance of the year, or to check in on whatever it is you've desired. So I cannot be more excited, KARLA, than to look for your smiling face there and your family. But I want to encourage everybody, please consider joining us in Boca, January 3rd and 4th, 2025, and we will look to see you there. All right. So right now we're going to plan to wrap up. So I'm going to go to you, Galen, first, if you would share with our audience. Remember, this is evergreen, so we can never assume that anybody's ever heard this before. So Galen, who you are, what you have, and how people can connect with you. And then KARLA will come to you. If you can just share how people can connect with you, and if you have anything special that you're promoting, and then we'll prepare to wrap up. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Galen Bingham. I'm the leadership strategist. Oh my gosh, this has been such an incredible conversation. I enjoy all the conversations that we have, but this one is just a very tangible example of what it takes to be successful on purpose. You can find me on all social media platforms. If you type in Galen Bingham, you're probably going to find me everywhere. If you put a bat signal in the sky, I might come in and try to help you in some way. I am a certified executive coach. I coach executives literally all over the world. But this is an opportunity, because I often hear Wow, Galen, I'd love to get your help, but there's a couple of barriers. Like number one, I'm not a high flying executive. I don't have the kind of money that that might be warranted for working with someone like you. So Dr. Peter James and I have created a 4-day challenge. For $97, it's the own your career 4-day challenge. It's going to be September 16th through the 19th. If you go to galenbingham.com and click this yellow box that's at the top of my website, you will have an opportunity to see what you're going to get in 4 days. It's not a full-on coaching session. It's not a full-on coaching program that's 6 months or 9 months or 12 months. And it's not my normal coaching fees. And for that, you not only get one executive coach, but you get 2 executive coaches to help you focus on your career and what you're trying to accomplish, who you're trying to be. It's going to be in the evening. That was another barrier that we heard. It's going to be in the evening time for those 4 days. You're going to get insights around what's really important to you and how do you step into that fully so that you can own your career. Check us out. I double dog dare you to see if this is for you. We're going to have fun and see if we can help a whole bunch of people.
All right, Carla, if you can share if you have anything, but also any comments or takeaways from the podcast today.
I want to thank both of you, and I've long admired you just in terms of you're one of my role models. It's one of the reasons I joined the National Association of Black Women in Construction. It's just been a blessing, and thank you for creating this space. And Galen, thank you for your long commitment. I'm a person that's watched this broadcast every Saturday, so I appreciate both of you. And anyone that's interested in reaching out to me, my website is gpscareerandbusinessstrategies.com. You can also text or call me at 215-802-0050. And I also want to offer one of the things that we talk about in persistence, and my phrase is assess to success. You got to know who you are in order to develop your purpose. This short tool, even I'm certified in several assessment instruments, this is one that helps you on that path to developing what your purpose is going to be. It measures why you do things and how you go about doing it. So we're putting in the chat the link where it'll take you 3 to 5 minutes to complete, and you'll get a complimentary 50-page report. But I would say focus on your superpowers as well as your kryptonite to move you to that next role. But yes, it's to find out more information about you so you can maximize you. Thank you.
Okay, and you're putting that in the chat on the YouTube. So everybody who's listening can go to the YouTube and pull it out of the YouTube in case they're listening to this in the future. So if we can take that link, Galen, if you can help us out and drop it inside the YouTube chat would be great. And that way, anybody who's listening can follow her. I've taken the drive assessment along with many of our NABRA members, and it is phenomenal. Many of us began to realize once we took it as a group, take it as a group, that we better understood why some of us connected more easily than others. And it was okay because now we know that there's some similarities, and then in some areas they're not. And so I think the sooner you can do that to learn more about yourself, whether it's Briggs or Drive or whatever it is, please connect with Karla Hill if you are looking for some support. She's an entrepreneur extraordinaire. I can attest to that. And she is the face of persistence. And you know what? I didn't realize until this podcast that you are from where originally?
I'm from New York City, first generation New Yorker. My mother's from Lamont, Costa Rica, and my dad was from Ondas.
Slow down. You're going too fast.
Oh, okay.
Your mom
first generation New Yorker, New York City.
No. Your mom is from where?
Oh, Lamont, Costa Rica.
And that is who you are. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I had the pleasure of visiting a couple, 2-3 months ago, and every single person, especially woman that I've met from anywhere in that area, you have the spirit of excellence and you have the spirit of persistence. And we could rename that Costa Rica, Medellin, the Colombia area persistence, especially for the women. And for those who may not know the history, especially of Medellin, Black women took control and stopped the violence. Powerful, powerful, powerful. So thank you so very much for your mom bringing you here in terms of that spirit that you have. It's just been phenomenal. And thank you also, Galen, for another excellent podcast. My name is Ann McNeil. And if you are looking to have a better quality of life in every area of your life, I made a commitment that I will promote my books. And today, the one I'm promoting today is one that I published last year, which is called This is Living. And it is a journal. And it is a journal, it's your daily journal of life lessons, my life lessons that I'm sharing in a journal format for all of you and with all of you, because I think so often, going back to something Karla shared, when we stop and reflect and review and assess, not just for the year, not just for the month, not just for the week, but just imagine if you are reflecting every single day. And so this is an opportunity to do that. It's called This is Living, and it's a part of the McNeil Factor suite of books and programs and products I have. But if you are looking to connect, you can text the word ANN, that's ANN. You can text it at the number 59925. That number again is 59925. And in return, I will send you my 6-point business plan, and we can discuss that at an appointment. But Karla, you have been a phenomenal guest today. Like Galen says, and he knows I take lots of notes, but you also know that too from watching me on other podcasts. And so I have a number of notes that I've taken from you today, and it has just been a joy. But my commitment as of today, going back to the point you made about the certification, and that is I am publicly committing, especially if anybody's on here from the National Speakers Association or Black NSA, I am committing to go ahead this year and start that process and complete the process for getting my certified professional speaker certification. And it is with the desire to build a better business, to be a better servant to my clients. And so thank you so very much, Karla, Galen, and Dr. Peter James. We missed you today, but guess what? This show did go on. So everybody enjoy your day, and we will encourage you to continue to remember to think and grow richer. Have a great day.